Up until this point in our forays into the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, we have focused primarily on the War of the Five Kings and Westeros. However, this does not present the full picture, as there is one more player who could yet upend the balance of power in Westeros. In this 6th episode of the History of Westeros, we will explore the fortunes of a certain Daenerys Targaryen, focusing on her journey from a young naive child to Khaleesi at the side of one of the most powerful Khals upon the Dothraki Sea, and how she rose as a phoenix from the ashes to set upon her crusade to free all those in chains within Slaver's Bay. If this was a tabletop game, Daenerys would certainly have some high rolls on her record, and we'd like you to enjoy the same. Well, I suppose we can't guarantee the numbers will be good, but you can at least make your dice throws beautiful with our sponsor, Dispel Dice. Right now, they're working with Wormwood to bring you the Elemental Collection, a dice and dice vault set with themes based on the 6 elements: water, fire, foliage, geode, space, and lightning. Dispel provides 2 choices of each dice in each set. You can get iconic dice, which are double casted so that small details can be added for a complex look, or choose iridescent dice, which have special coating that changes their sheen based on viewing angle. The precise look depends on your chosen element, so check them all out, and you'll get a dice vault to store them in with hand inlays or laser illustrations made from either ebony or cherry wood. Importantly though, these mesmerizing dice are only available through the Kickstarter we've linked below until December 25th, or in other words, very soon after this video comes out, so don't waste any time because the chance to get these rare dice is about to be withdrawn. Links are in the description. While Robert Baratheon ruled in the Seven Kingdoms, content in the defeat of his great rival Rhaegar Targaryen, and the death of the Mad King Aerys, the Targaryen line had not been entirely snuffed out. The youngest scions of the house, a brother and a sister, still drew breath. At present, their continued existence in Essos posed no immediate threat to the usurper, but time would prove to be a great equalizer in this tale. Princess Daenerys Targaryen, also referred to as Daenerys Stormborn due to the circumstances of her birth, was the youngest child of King Aerys II Targaryen and his sister wife, Queen Rhaella Targaryen. She was initially conceived during the last month of Robert's rebellion, which, as we have already detailed, was not a great time to be a Targaryen. Shortly after this conception, Rhaella was sent to Dragonstone, the ancestral home of House Targaryen, with the unborn Daenerys' older brother, the young Prince Viserys, in order to avoid the rebel army headed by Ned Stark following their victory at the Battle of the Trident. Daenerys was born in inauspicious circumstances, as a great storm raging about Dragonstone destroyed what remained of the Targaryen fleet, while her mother would not survive the birth of her daughter. The Targaryen family had been decimated in the war, with Aerys, Rhaegar, and his children, Rhaenys and Aegon, murdered by the Mountain, leaving young Viserys and Daenerys as the last of the dragons. Viserys was therefore named king on the island of Dragonstone, while Daenerys, as his heir, was named Princess of Dragonstone. Their time on Dragonstone was to be fleeting, as Stannis Baratheon was building a mighty fleet to take the island. Fortunately for the House of the Dragon, one Sir Willem Darry, the former Master-at-Arms of the Red Keep, smuggled the children to the free city of Braavos, where they lived under Darry's protection until his death. In 297 AC, the Targaryens were taken in by Magister Illyrio Mopatis of the free city of Pentos, who sheltered them for half a year and offered to help in reclaiming the Iron Throne. In order to do so, he brokered a marriage to the Dothraki Khal Drogo, who would marry Daenerys in return for providing her brother Viserys with the army required to reclaim the kingdom he deemed to be his by right. The two were wed outside the walls of Pentos, with the most important gift of the day being 3 petrified dragon eggs provided by Magister Illyrio, and the sworn service of the exiled and disgraced knight Ser Jorah Mormont to Viserys. Although she had initially dreaded marrying such a violent and barbaric man as Khal Drogo, during the Khalasar's journey to Vaes Dothrak, the only true city of the Dothraki, a loving relationship ensued between the unlikely pairing. Moreover, Daenerys also became aware of her brother's weakness and ineptitude as a ruler, finally shedding the fear she had so long held for him. On her 14th name day, Daenerys revealed to all that she was now pregnant, and they finally arrived in Vaes Dothrak not long after. Daenerys' marriage, pregnancy, and overall upturn in fortunes did not go unnoticed, and the revelations were to have massive implications back in King's Landing. When King Robert learned of Daenerys' marriage through his Master of Whispers, Lord Varys, it caused friction between the king and his hand Eddard Stark, and the further revelation that she was now pregnant led Robert to command that a price be put on Daenerys and Viserys' head. At Vaes Dothrak, Daenerys was presented to the elders of the Dothraki, the Dosh Khaleen, and took part in a ceremony for her unborn child, eating a raw stallion heart in the process. Following this, the Dosh Khaleen named Daenerys' child the Stallion Who Mounts the World. Meanwhile, Viserys would cause a fair share of difficulties on that same evening, as he first attempted to steal Daenerys' eggs, only to be foiled by Ser Jorah, before arriving at the ceremony with his blade in hand, which was forbidden. He then drunkenly threatened Daenerys and her child, which led to Khal Drogo melting the gold medallions on his belt before giving him the crown he had asked for. So it was that the eldest of the Targaryens died screaming, far from the kingdom he had striven to reclaim his whole life. The brutal death suffered by her brother left Daenerys the supposed last surviving Targaryen, and as such, she felt the need to take up the deceased Viserys' cause of reclaiming the Seven Kingdoms. However, her husband, Khal Drogo, was uninterested in such a plan, until assassins attempting to claim King Robert's reward were barely foiled by Ser Jorah. This ignited the fury of the great Khal, who made a solemn vow to reconquer the Seven Kingdoms for their unborn son. This vow caused him to lead their Khalasar south, in order to enslave as many people as possible, with the plan to exchange them for ships in Slaver's Bay. During this incursion, they ran headfirst into a Lazarene town, which was being assaulted by another Khalasar, led by Khal Oggo. The two Khalasars proceeded to engage in battle, with Khal Drogo coming out on top and gaining some 10,000 captives, who Daenerys put under her direct protection to prevent their rape, causing furor among the Dothraki. During the battle, Drogo was injured and was unable to be seen immediately by the healers, leading to Daenerys turning to the aid of a Lazarene god's wife called Mirri Maz Duur. However, the poultice Mirri provided itched and burned Khal Drogo, who tore it off, replacing it with a plaster formed primarily of mud. This did little to stem the pain, and the wound began to fester, causing the mighty Khal to become weaker and weaker until he eventually fell off his horse. Daenerys sensed the danger in this, as a Khal who cannot ride a horse cannot lead a Khalasar and would not remain a Khal for long. Acting quickly, Daenerys ordered that camp be made before asking for Mirri Maz Duur to be brought to her. Rumours of the Khal's fall had already begun to spread, however, and by the time Jorah came to their tent and examined the wound underneath the mud plaster, he concluded that Khal Drogo was good as dead already. Despite urging her to leave, for fear of the power struggle that would ensue following Drogo's death, Daenerys instead sent the knight to put on his armor. When Mirri arrived, Daenerys asked her to save Drogo using blood magic. However, Mirri warned her that only death may pay for life, even though it would not be her life that acted as the counterweight in this bargain. As the ritual began, a battle erupted between Drogo's blood riders and Daenerys' personal guard, Cass, as the unborn Rhaego began to kick wildly, causing Daenerys to go into labor. The midwives would not attend her, however, due to the black magic ritual which was ongoing. This caused Jorah to carry her back into the tent in the hopes that Mirri could do something. Daenerys, too weak to protest, acquiesced and soon passed out. Daenerys came to some days later, following several horrific fever dreams, and was holding one of her dragon eggs. Her predicament was a brutal one. Her son Rhaego was stillborn and malformed. the price of blood magic, and Drogo, although alive, was now in a catatonic state. When Daenerys demanded to know when he would return to his prior wakeful state, Miri responded, "When the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, when the seas go dry and mountains blow in the wind like leaves, when your womb quickens again and you bear a living child, then he will return, and not before." Miri had purposefully brought about this waking nightmare for Daenerys in retribution for the burning of her temple and the slaughter of her people. Due to this, the Lazarene god's wife was arrested under Daenerys' orders, and realizing that Drogo was now past the point of no return, Daenerys euthanized the man. She further declared herself to be queen, freed her slaves, and created a Khalasar of sorts. Furthermore, Jorah was named as a knight of her Queen's Guard. The Queen then ordered a pyre to be built for the deceased Drogo, and placed upon it her 3 dragon eggs. Miri was bound to it, with Daenerys informing the witch that only death can pay for life. The pyre was set alight just as the first star, which happened to be a red comet, was seen in the sky, and once the fire was at its greatest extent and ferocity, Daenerys walked into the flames. The next morning, as the flame had died out and the ground had cooled, the makeshift Khalasar found their queen naked yet alive among the ashes. Her being unharmed would cause enough consternation for the everyday Dothraki. However, it was the 3 newly hatched dragons which brought the greatest shock to her people. These dragons, the first to live since the year 153 AC, caused all gathered to drop to their knees and swear oaths to Daenerys, oaths which would make them more loyal to her than they ever were to Drogo. The 3 dragons were named Viserion, after Daenerys' brother Viserys, Rhaegal, after her brother Rhaegar, and Drogon, after her deceased husband. Unable to remain where they were, with several powerful Khalasars nearby, decisive action was required. Daenerys elected to follow the Red Comet, which she saw as a herald of her coming, causing her to take her people through the Red Waste. They soon came to an abandoned city that the Queen named Vice Taloro. There, the Khalasar began to recover from the terrible journey, while her Blood Riders were sent out to look for a way forward. 2 of the 3 returned empty-handed. However, Joggo returned accompanied by 3 citizens of the city of Qarth: the merchant Zaro Zoan Daxos, the warlock Priat Pri, and the Shadowbringer Quaitj of Ashai. They escorted Daenerys and her people to Qarth, with Zaro inviting them to stay in his palace. It is at this point that she learned of the death of King Robert and the ensuing conflict over his succession. Daenerys was not idle during her time in Qarth, attempting to find backers in her reconquest of the 7 kingdoms. This proved to be less than successful, and before long she was left with only one faction to turn to, the Warlocks. Daenerys went to the House of the Undying, where Pyat Pri gave her Shade of the Evening, and she entered the building alone. She soon experienced several strange visions, and when she finally reached the Hall of the Undying, a prophecy was spoken, apparently dictating her future. "We know the shape of shadows, morrows not yet made. Drink from the cup of ice, drink from the cup of fire, mother of dragons, child of 3. 3 heads has the dragon, 3 fires must you light, 1 for life and 1 for death and 1 to love. 3 mounts must you ride, 1 to bed and 1 to dread and 1 to love. 3 treasons will you know, once for blood and once for gold and once for love. Daughter of death, slayer of lies, bride of fire." More visions followed, as the Undying attacked her. Fortunately, Drogon set them all alight, allowing her to flee. As she ran, Daenerys was attacked by Pyat Pri. However, a combination of her Blood Riders Joggo and Rakaro and Drogon saved her from the infuriated Warlock. This destructive act, which resulted in the destruction of the Qarthi palace, turned the Qartheen against the Targaryen queen, as Pyat Pri was now gathering the remaining warlocks to confront her. After she rejected a marriage proposal from Zaro, he offered her ships in exchange for one of her dragons. Daenerys rejected this too, and led her people out of the palace. She visited the docks in the hopes of finding passage for her and her people. Jorah warned her that they were now being followed by two strangers. Focused on the strangers, Daenerys was caught unaware when another individual, which happened to be a sorrowful man, one of the foremost assassins in the world, handed her a box, from which emerged an extremely deadly manticore. One of the strangers, acting with immense haste, knocked aside the manticore before it could sting her, which saved the queen's life. The two strangers were Belwas, a massive eunuch and former pit fighter, and his supposed squire Arstan Whitebeard, who revealed that they had been sent to Qarth by Magister Illyrio. They had with them 3 ships, meant to escort Daenerys and her people back to Pentos, on the orders of her former benefactor. Daenerys then renamed the ships provided to her as Vagar, Meraxes and Balerion, after the dragons of Aegon I Targaryen and his sister wives Rhaenys and Visenya, as they began the voyage towards Pentos. During the journey, Ser Jorah convinced Daenerys to change course to Astapor, due to his distrust of the Magister. This city within Slaver's Bay produced the finest eunuch spearmen in the world, the Unsullied, who were known to have defeated even the Dothraki in open battle, and he further believed that having a loyal army behind her would increase her bargaining power with Illyrio. At this point, the exiled knight also expressed his deep-seated love for her and offered to be one of the 3 heads of the dragon as her husband. When they arrived in Astapor, Daenerys began to treat with the good masters, with the arrogant Krasinnis Mon Naklos, using a translator Missandei, insulting the Targaryen queen, as he believed she could not understand High Valyrian. In spite of the protests of Arstan Whitebeard against the usage of slave soldiers, Daenerys informed the good masters that she would exchange all of her ships, goods, and Drogon in return for all of the 8,600 Unsullied and the 5,000 boys in training. The slavers agreed to this transaction and presented Missandei as a gift, who Daenerys promptly freed. The following day, Daenerys assumed control of her soldiers and betrayed the good masters when she ordered Drogon to attack the slavers and her Unsullied to conquer the city. She then freed all of the slaves there and set up a council to rule the free city. She further freed all of her Unsullied that she possessed, who then elected to continue in her service. At the head of her new, extremely effective army, Daenerys set her sights on the city of Yunkai. The slavers there, aware of the sack of Astapor, hired 2 sellsword companies, the Storm Crows and Second Sons, to supplement their slave army of 4,000. Daenerys met with the delayed envoy from Yunkai and the leaders of the mercenary companies, offering to pay them more than the Yunkish in order to get them to switch sides. The envoy from Yunkai, Grazdan Moerez, arrived last and offered Daenerys gold to turn back. She refused and ordered that all of their slaves be freed within 3 days or she would sack the city. Once the Yunkish envoy had left, Daenerys revealed her intention to attack the city that same night. The Stormcrow's leaders continued to argue about her offer, while the Second Sons became drunk on the wine she had given them. Just before the battle was to begin, however, Daario Naharis walked into the Targaryen camp and presented the queen with the heads of his fellow captains, Prendal Nargezen and Salor, before pledging the Stormcrows to her cause. As the army attacked Yunkai, Daenerys remained in camp. Though Mero, captain of the Second Sons, escaped, thousands of soldiers were taken captive, with Daenerys agreeing to spare any slave or sellsword who would swear their loyalty to her. Daenerys then made her way to the gates of Yunkai, but waited until the morning of the 3rd day before she took any further action. That same morning, the gates of the mighty city were opened, and the slaves of Yunkai streamed forth, hailing Daenerys as Misa, which in the Giscari tongue meant mother. They welcomed her as a savior and liberator, the breaker of chains. Yunkai was the second slaver city which Daenerys Stormborn had been able to liberate with limited resistance. The next few videos in this series will be dedicated to what was to come next, as the last of the Targaryens comes to learn the true burdens of ruling a liberated people. We're planning to cover the battles of many other fantasy, sci-fi and space opera universes, so make sure you have subscribed and pressed the bell button. Please consider liking and sharing, as it helps immensely, as we want to know what you think about this video and which videos you hope to see in the future. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.